Hello, we're back with Deep Images, and we are going to give you part two of our Symposium on the Seven Samurai by Akira Kurosawa. Uh, to reiterate, we're celebrating the 70th anniversary. It was released April 26, 1954. And of course, it's one of the highest grossing movies in Japanese history. It was one of the most expensive movies to make at the time in Japanese history. And also, it's widely regarded as one of the most influential and some say one of, if not the greatest films of all time. So we got a couple of us here. Me and Keith got to watch it at the repertories and see it in the big screen during this occasion that lasted for a couple of weeks across the country. And we've been kind of discussing in part one the basics, you know. So if you want a rundown of the characters, the actors, the premise, check out part one and drop a like on it while you're at it. So right now, though, I think I'm going to shift over to um, our experiences with it. I'd like Keith to go first because I'm very curious about the circumstance. I know some of them, but not all of them in which you saw it.
Okay. Yeah, it's one of these movies that I've known about since I was in college when I took my film art and film class, and we talked about a lot of films, including Seven Samurai. Saw a few clips here or there, but never the full movie. And so it was just one of those that in my head didn't want to I didn't want to watch it on video. I wanted to experience first time on film. Magnificent Seven, of course, is one of my favorite films of all time, and so I'm already familiar with the basic overall structure, as well as the fact that, like you mentioned in part one, this movie's been cribbed and stolen from ad nauseum. And it's like so I'm actually going in fairly blind, and so the re-release on that came with the 4K restoration, beautiful by the way. um, the Austin Film Society had a screening, so I went to the Austin Film Society screening, experienced it there. It was just an amazing film going experience. I'm so glad I waited. As you all know, the visually it's just stunning. But I would also just think I'm trying to take in so much as I'm watching it and absorbing what's going on. And so, like you're mentioning. When you're going through the plot, about samurai and stuff, and as I'm watching it that first time, I'm kind of like, my take on it is that at this point in time, the samurai are basically out of favor. That
Seems like it.
the world at that time, that the samurai have become kind of synonymous not with these wonderful mercenary types that are here to protect the innocent and all that, but instead serve themselves and money basically, and what you can give me, and so there's, I think that the world in which these guys are operating in is one in which samurai is kind of a dirty word in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And so when we have Shimada, is that the guy, or is it, what's the character's name? Sh
Oh,
is it Shimada? Who's
Shimada. I
this
can't remember if that's
guy?
a character name or an actor name.
Yeah, I think that's it. Kambai Shimada.
Yes, that's our main.
Yeah.
I forgot his
Okay.
family name.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, yeah. Okay,
Kanbei. Yes, yes, yes.
Kanbei. Okay. Well,
Takashi
anyway,
Shimura.
so I think what I'm catching from him is, he's old school. He's an old school samurai who's kind
Yeah.
of at this point almost embarrassed by the current generation of this. He's done with it. He's the classic, warrior who's done with it. He's seen enough death. He's seen enough fighting. He doesn't like the way things are going. Just leave me alone. I'm just here to just zen out
Right.
and just live my life and all that. And of course, he can't, because that's not his character. His character is such that when he sees the weak, when he sees the downtrodden, when he sees those in need, he's gonna he's going to do what needs to be done. Even to the point of, yeah, like you said, shaving off his hair and all of that. He removes all the trappings of a samurai, all the trappings of who he is to basically come out there and be and completely hide as like a monk, I think, so that
Yeah.
the guy has no idea what's coming. He's willing to do that, but it also shows what a true samurai is willing to do. They're willing to completely subjugate themselves in
Yeah.
service of the others, right? And so,
Mhm.
that demonstration of that is what I think sparks the snowball that starts to grow, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Because then you've got the villagers who are so desperate that they're actually willing to go to try to find an honest samurai. They would like to find an honest samurai. Well, it appears they have found one. And all they can offer him up is some rice. Which he thinks you can see it all over him. Is like, I'm okay. It's like, sure, rice. I'll do it for rice. Okay, right? It's like, in other words, he's basically saying, I will do this for free, but I understand your honor requires you to give me something. So yeah, okay, okay, give me some
Right,
rice,
right.
kind of, right? That sort of thing. And
Placate them, yes.
right. It not to dishonor them, right? He's an honorable guy.
Yeah.
And so he draws in these guys, and I love the relationship, yeah, with his little right-hand man that comes along. You can see these two guys, they've had experience. They know what this is like. And he obviously recognizes this guy probably has a history of saying, I'm done with this shit, and getting pulled back in, and then I'm
Mm.
done with this shit, and then I'm pulled back in, kind of a thing. And so
Yeah.
they both have that good relationship. They know each other that way. The others, I think what we're seeing is the process of them becoming samurai. I don't think they probably,
Well,
I'm
two of
sure that,
them, three
you
of
know
them, three of them were definitely samurai, but yes, two
because
of them are kind of
I
in the, yeah.
I got the sense that the others were guys who had maybe fought, but weren't necessarily samurai yet.
Well, the
It's like,
real deadly guy is definitely one a samurai, and then
he never says whether he is.
no, but they
We're
talk
supposed to
about
real
him.
we're supposed to realize
Right.
that, because
He's so quiet.
a true samurai is not going to be talking about himself, right?
Right.
But these other guys, they're trained, and it's like he can see in them. That's how I'm reading it as I'm watching it, is like, oh, he can see in these guys. They have they have that spark, they have the ability. Now he can kind of mentor them along and take care of this situation, but also maybe also bring some more honorable samurai into the picture, instead of some of these guys that have kind of tarnished what it means to be a samurai.
Mhm.
That's kind of how I was reading it. And of course,
Yeah.
there's the one who's the son of a samurai, and of course, obviously, we get the impression his father does not even want him to be a samurai.
Right. Right.
Again, it's like, if you are a samurai, you probably recognize how that it it's not as glorious as you think.
It's
It's
like not
it's
wanting to be your son, wanting your son to be a soldier.
Right, exactly. And we get that because when we have some of those battle scenes and fight scenes that I'm sure we'll talk about in more detail. One of the things I was struck by, being 1954, is how brutal the sword fighting was. None
Mm.
of this practice stuff that we see now with all the whoosh whoosh whoosh, but no, it's like whack 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 whack. It's like whack whack
I
whack.
think that I think this was the first samurai movie that
Yeah.
upped the ante on violence. Of course, they went out
I
of
mean,
control
but
after that, but this one, I
but I'm
think,
just saying, it was like
yeah.
there was no attempt to make like the beautiful dance that we see of the
Oh yeah.
choreography
Right.
of
Right. I get what you're saying.
Hollywood. This was more of like, guys, this is not pretty. This is harsh. And I almost think it was like that this was Kurosawa's point in doing it this way, was to remind Japanese people at that time, that don't glorify this, don't glorify war, don't glorify fighting and battle. This is gross. It's dirty. It's harsh. It's and there's nothing beautiful about this.
Right.
And don't worship death and don't worship the fight and all of that. And I think that's kind of the message I was getting, is this is a very anti-war type of message coming across here. And so yeah, I just really think it was really good. And yes, that whole relationship with the daughter and the father, who is by all Western accounts just an abusive prick, and even you get that sense also from Kambay, that he makes enough comments to enforce for the viewer that this is bullshit behavior, that what this guy's doing,
Right.
but not in such a way that would dishonor him in front of everybody. In other words, what I got the sense was that he was allowing him to dishonor himself
Yeah,
in front
Monzo
of
hung
everybody.
himself with his own rope.
Exactly. It's like the people are seeing him, and that's dishonorable enough. I don't have to say it to
That's
them,
an excellent point.
you know? And I thought that was really smart filmmaking and
Yeah,
storytelling, I thought, you
absolutely.
know? But I think it was, again, thinking about the time in which the movie was made versus the time that it's set, I got a sense that maybe it was also a veiled commentary on the culture at the time, of maybe we need to value our women a little bit more. We need to be more respectful, that kind of thing. It's like
Mhm.
this
Mhm.
type of behavior, it needs to kind of go away.
Right.
you know
Yeah.
Right. Right.
by highlighting it, you draw, sometimes
And it was
that.
still going strong in the 50s. So,
Right. And I feel like, yeah, this movie in a lot of ways is real groundbreaking, even
yeah.
in a cultural sense. And then what else? The other thought was, I thought it was interesting and distracting when I'm watching it, how all the villagers had their heads shaved into that thing as well. And so I went going online trying to find out about all of that at the time, and it's like could not find consensus historically as to why, but it was historically accurate, but couldn't find a historical consensus on why. I
Right.
got maybe the impression that it was supposed to be that a style that had been it to honor the samurai in a way,
Yeah.
and then it became something that's just stuck around.
Yeah.
But historians seem to more lean towards, nah, it was being shaved that way because they put their hats on it, like they kept their head from sweating.
Yeah,
It
and
was really
I'm not sure. I
yeah.
mean, the samurai actually popularized it and codified it, but I having not lived back then, I really have no idea who actually had their head shaved and who didn't. We
Yeah.
just have these historical representations in movies,
But
not just
it just is interesting that they do it in that male pattern way and
yeah.
not just shave the head.
It's like just for let's just go for it. It's going to happen in a few years anyway.
Right.
It's already happening to
Yeah.
me.
So, and so it was that was a little distracting to me because I wasn't expecting that. And it was like, why has everybody got the same hair? Anyway.
Well, they make a point of that the hair thing, within the story, which is cool. Whereas a lot of
Right.
samurai movies that came subsequently, um, it seemed to be very much artistic license with the characters and actors. Like, for instance, you maybe once or twice, but not often do you see Tatsuya Nakadai having a completely shaved head on top. He has done it. It might have been makeup. I don't know. Mifune's never done it.
Hmm.
Obviously, he would not do it. I can see that. And I wouldn't either. He had some nice hair. He's like, no, but those guys were big star. Well, they were on rising stars. Um, the one point you made about the farmers and the timeliness of it, obviously since they're protecting the downtrodden and you have all these little interplays like the samurai kid, aspiring samurai kid, and his tryst with the innocent young girl with short hair. And I really think obviously it's a class struggle film,
Right.
and
Yeah.
it's an indictment of the samurai class,
Mm-hmm.
though it does criticize the farmers too in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
But essentially, this movie is the kind of thing that really should have been used as a metric in the 1960s for America, because essentially, if you are going to upend the establishment, the underclass can't do it alone. You have to have class traders, and the samurai are class traders. So except for Kukichio, who turns out actually is the underclass after all, pretending to be a samurai
Right.
and doing a damn good job as far as fighting. But so that's just some of my thoughts on it. Did you have further?
Um,
how was the venue? I mean, how were a lot of
oh,
people?
yeah, oh yeah, it was full. Yeah, it's not a big theater. But it's one with a lot of history in Austin. It's technically the same theater I saw, for example, Star Trek V, The Final Frontier,
Hmm.
when it first came out, was in this thing, but it has since then the theater that was there went out of business, and it became a venue for conventions and things like that. And now the American Film or Austin Film Society's taken it over, and so now they've got a couple of screens and also meeting rooms and stuff like that. So it's a really nice
So you
venue.
have that, and you have the Alamo Draft House.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. We got some
Do you have any other
multiples.
theaters like that, or they the two
Oh
main ones?
no, we've got others. Like
Wow.
Flick's Brew House in Round Rock is probably my preferred to go to, just
We have
because.
one. We have the one
Oh
art house
really?
theater, the
Oh no,
Independent Picture House. Plugging again, and I will be doing shooting from there in the near future.
nice.
Hopefully not alone, but because since I know a couple of us are in Charlotte, but that theater is our first one. Is opened 2 years ago. I mean, the Visual Light kind of functioned that way for a little while in the '70s. Um, and then it was a regular theater, then it was an art house theater, then it was a porn theater by the early '80s, and then now it's live music shows.
Hmm.
But it's like a block from this community college that I went to, and um, but yeah, I mean there is a Cinemark Bistro, which I'm not sure who owns that on a corporate level, but it's not really art house, but it's not quite like the multiplexes either. It has a little there's some differences here. And first of all, they serve you like full meals, and you have like a tray and everything,
Oh
which
yeah,
didn't matter to me at all because now I can't eat most of the food anymore. But I did eat it. I did eat a cheese pizza with parmesan, not tomato sauce. So they had something for everybody. Um, it was a cool place, but we'll get another time. So I saw
well,
another movie there recently. I actually
AF
I saw the day before, 2 days before Seven Samurai.
well, AFS has a full bar out there too, so that's
Hmm.
also
Yeah.
nice. You know,
AMC's used well,
um,
they do have one at the one I used to live, and but the last several times I went, it was like it was always closed, and a lot of it, I'm sure, was like
oh
people
well,
not getting paid much money, calling out.
well, Austin Film Society, though, I think they're not only are they paid, but they got a lot of volunteers and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and it's pretty upscale in terms of
Oh
the
yeah.
bar situation and stuff in there. So they're trying to be a classier
Well, it's
type of.
obviously a nerve center because they started
Yeah,
actually putting out their own Blu-rays and things.
yeah.
I
So
bought one
that's
of their
good.
first Blu-rays. I pre-ordered. They did
Oh really?
Ms. 45.
Nice.
That may have been the first or one of the very first that Avalon Draft House put together.
One other thing about the movie itself. Um, I I mean, I guess in some sort of the broader strokes, there's some aspect of this being a hero's journey, but the idea that all great stories are a variation of the hero's journey. I'm almost tempted to say no, it's like it's a hero's journey or it's a Seven Samurai story, because there is enough that's different about the idea of getting the band together or grabbing the band to defend the downtrodden that's quite different than just your basic hero's journey path.
Yeah,
And even though there's some overlap,
yeah,
I feel like this is you can almost kind of say, no, not everything's a hero's journey. Some things are Seven Samurai, and they're not the
yeah,
same. You know,
Right.
and I think when you see this movie, if you've never seen it, I think it would start to dawn on you as you're watching. Oh yeah, okay, that yeah, because I think sometimes we try to squeeze other movies into this hero's journey thing because it's become so much of a
Right.
common frame of thinking. I'm like, no,
yeah. The
no, no,
whole
no, no.
Joseph Campbell
It's
thing.
kind of the
Yeah,
way Hollywood screenwriters kind of teach you
Right.
to
And
do
I
the
would
three
say,
act story, like Todd
uh-huh.
Field's book, and they have to
Yeah.
have the inciting incident early in. You have to,
Right,
and
exactly.
I don't
And
even, I don't even pay attention to that.
I think Seven Samurai is a good place to say, here's the other this is the other way of approaching it without having
Yeah.
to do that. You don't have to do the three act structure. You don't have to have the inciting event. You don't
Yeah,
need these things always. Sometimes it's just this,
yeah, it has its own
sometimes
structure.
it's, I mean, Blues Brothers follows the Magnificent Seven/Seven Samurai. I mean, you can
Yeah.
form it around almost
Mm.
any type of scenario that you want. It's a brilliantly simple structure that resonates, and it allows you to have those characterizations, and that's the benefit that I think takes it over the hero's journey as just a basic storytelling structure, is you have at least 3 to 7 very definable and unique characters, and so you've got that interplay, and you don't always get that in a hero's journey. The emphasis on character so much, because they're so focused on archetypes that they sometimes miss character, and these are all
Yeah.
very defined characters, and human personalities, and I think that's also something to be looking for if you're looking for a Seven Samurai type story.
Well, and it's so archetypal that it's just seeped into
It's
the fabric.
become
I
archetypal.
mean, obviously, we've all been into comic books at one time or another in this assemblage. So I mean, obviously one of the biggest movies ever was the Avengers, the first
Mhm.
Avengers film. Same thing. Nick Fury approaches them one by one or gets someone else to approach them, and you
Mhm.
learn about them, and then you see how they interact, and it's not always good.
Yeah.
Right?
But
Right?
I love that premise. I loved it before I even knew about Seven Samurai. I was
Hmm.
occasionally I'd see it in comics and in TV shows, but I know that that's where it originated, was here. Um, well, that's pretty awesome. Justin, what were your thoughts upon seeing this for the first time? You've definitely shared some insight about a lot of the plot points. What was it like seeing it in the theater? Where'd you see it? How was it?
Well, I thanks to Dwayne, I managed to see it on the laptop, but
Oh,
I
that's
I
right.
do intend, yeah, the last couple of days. So Thursday night, I watched the first 2 hours or so because it's about a 3 hour, 25 minute film. So I watched 2 hours Thursday night, my time, and then watched the last hour 20 last night. It took me till about 2 in the morning because I had other things to do. But um, I do intend to see it at the cinema because I my local art house cinema has shown a preview of it recently, so I suspect it's going to be there
Yeah,
at
this
some point
70th
by
anniversary thing is going to be is a months long
October.
worldwide tour.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I will try with the regular movie going buddy go to see Seven Samurai. It's funny, it's not really a film I'd heard much about until this year, until it came through this group that we were going to talk about it. So I'm definitely glad I discovered it and watched it. Um, and I'm very interested in history as well. So to have a film set in 1580s AD feudalist Japan was kind of interesting to me as well. And also the fact that it's a period film in the sense that it was made in 1954. I like that aspect as well because it's
Right.
beautifully shot in the black and white. I don't think it would be as good if it was other than black and white. And also that sort of grandiose type soundtrack you get from films like Ben Hur and like this one that are made in the 60s or 50s, epic type films.
Yeah.
Added a lot to it as well. So it's visually stunning because it's set in that agricultural rural backdrop. And I read somewhere that when it was made in 1954, it was before the industrial or economic boom in Japan started in the 50s and 60s. And at that time in 1954, Japan was still very much at least 50% agricultural society. So the moviegoers who saw this film in Japan in 1954 would probably be familiar with that way of life that was portrayed in the film, which hadn't really changed that much over a number of centuries. They would have been from that agricultural background.
Right.
Um, and it's fairly blockbuster action. As we've said, it's influenced a lot of Western filmmakers and films like The Magnificent Seven, even Star Wars, some
Well, actually,
sci-fi
there's a
films.
specific Star Wars film that influenced Star Wars. It wasn't Seven Samurai. There was The Hidden Fortress. Did you
Yeah,
know that?
okay.
Uh,
Yeah,
No.
Star Wars is a quasi remake on
Mhm.
some levels of the Hidden Fortress. You know, when I finally saw the Hidden Fortress, I cited out what I recognized, and then I just happened to see an interview with Lucas a year or two later, and he said the exact same thing that I noticed. So, I mean, it
Yeah.
has these elements. It's a different kind of group coming together, um, and yeah, the
Yeah.
trope. They're all going to
It's a
rescue
trope.
a
It's a trope.
princess. You have two bumbling people. That's the droids. You
Yeah.
know, they're going to go rescue the princess, who's Leia. And in Hidden Fortress, she's even more of a badass than Leia is. And you know, which a twist, you know, there. She's not a helpless, you know, damsel. And then you have I think it's the Mifune character is kind of like the Han Solo, kind of like rugged, you know, what the fuck kind of guy, you know. Um, it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. I
Yeah.
recommend that one
Yeah.
to you.
It's also just a ripoff of the Wizard of Oz too. So Star Wars
Yeah. 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 So
kind of follows
the
the
trope.
same beats.
Yeah, I can see that.
It kind of does.
So I think it might even have influenced Peter Jackson when he was making the first Lord of the Rings trilogy film. Because if you look at the trope of drawing people together from different backgrounds to fight the common foe, you can
Though
say
that
that's
was
in
in the
Fellowship.
novel, though. But you're right, it is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
well,
way you
that's right.
structured it, I see what you're talking
Yeah, the
about.
way he structured it for the movie. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I don't think it would have influenced Tolkien necessarily, but yeah, I mean, it was Fellowship of the Ring was in that part. In terms of how it was filmed, though, in the Two Towers, the second film, when I was watching Samurai, I could sort of see elements of what was in the Two Towers in terms of the battle sequences, the long battle sequence, and the use of rain and sort of pathos.
Kurosawa
Just
loves rain, man. His actors must
before,
hate
before
him.
the before the
Rain and
final
mud.
gun stuff. Well, he had them running a lot too. I've never seen so many
Yeah.
people running backwards and forwards at helter skelter in one film as I have
And in
in
the
this
rain
film.
and the mud, you know, like what
And
the
Yeah,
running from
yeah.
side to side, and sometimes looking aimless as well. And so many horses. Everyone was on horseback a lot of the time, or at least the bandits were on horseback a lot.
hmm
Yeah.
And a lot of horses falling over and people being crushed under horses. So I was kind of worried about the animal welfare a little bit. I don't know how
Yeah.
strong they would have been on that in 1954.
Well, they were
Uh,
some of the people involved were Buddhists, so I mean, you know, I mean, it wasn't like Italy where you know up until the '80s they just like slaughtered any animal they felt like if they thought it'd go in the movie, you know,
Yeah.
and Coppola, even being an Italian American, you know, has some real animal death in several of his films. So, but Japanese,
yeah,
not so much. So yeah, yeah, they hopefully did take care of those horses. They're nice creatures.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, so yeah, lots of battle scenes in the second half of the film as well. So I did find the second part, I guess, easier to watch, I suppose, but it was also interesting in the first half watching the samurai being gathered, and as you said before, the scene where one of my favorite characters, the younger guy, Katsushiro, was hiding behind the door with a wooden staff to try and beat these
Mhm.
possible candidates over the head to see if they're going to be,
It's just slapstick.
have their wits about them or sufficient to join the group. And the first guy, of course, is just far too fast for him. He does walk through the door unsuspecting, but in a split second realizes there's someone there and quickly wrests the staff away from him.
Yeah,
What are you What are you doing?
yeah. What are you
There was
doing
one
behind
guy,
that door, kid? You know.
and there was one guy who just came to the door and, without even walking through, he said, "You can't be serious. What are you playing at?" Because he
He
seemed
had
to
the
know already that
instincts.
he had the instinct that there was someone standing behind the door.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one of the funnier moments. There's quite a few funny moments in this film, actually. And the way they keep talking in the second half of the film about "watch out for the muskets, watch out for the muskets,"
Yeah.
that becomes a regular refrain from the leader, and it makes the samurai. And
Well,
it got
you know
famous.
it's bad when the bandits are like, okay, we're gonna go ahead and you know use the great equalizer, the gun, you know,
The
They,
muskets
they
thing
only
was
had, they only had
another
three of them.
was the muskets thing was another thing that got me going to Google because I was like, they had muskets then?
yeah,
I'm like,
Japanese did. Yeah.
you know, I'm like, what?
Yeah,
What? They had
I'm pretty
I'm
sure
like,
Japanese or Chinese
yeah.
invented gunpowder almost a
But
thousand
yeah,
years
you know,
ago.
I went and I looked and it was like, yeah, we're talking like 150, 200 years already by this point. I'm like, what?
I
I
know.
am so ignorant of
Yeah.
history.
I don't know when the handgun started. That I forgot where that started, but you know that's more
So
like
yeah,
the
that
18th
was a
century.
distraction as I was watching. I was
Yeah,
like, seriously, they're gonna have guns? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I've
Well,
seen some other
I was
samurai
thinking, yeah,
movies later that do it, and it's kind of depressing. I mean, because it's kind of like, okay, they're gonna have guns, so okay, it could be over real quick. You know?
But the way they handled it, I thought was great. They
Yeah,
they not only did it become, integral to the story, but also had some great comedy moments with it as well
hmm
that really helped lighten the tone and the mood a little bit when
yeah, yeah.
needed.
yeah. Well, I was thinking the same, Keith. Actually, I was thinking muskets because I'm familiar with muskets in these films like the Last of the Mohicans, which are set in the probably the 1780s and not the 1580s. But then
hmm
I thought to myself, yeah, well, maybe that's true because I know that Japanese or Chinese culture were into gunpowder, and it may well be they
Yeah,
invented those weapons.
they invented gunpowder.
And
I don't
there's
know if they
actually,
invented the musket, but
yeah, well, maybe Western technology learned from the Far Eastern technology in that sense. But yeah,
it was all
if it
before
was in the
America was even dreamt of. So
yeah 1580s, I
yeah.
suppose Christopher Columbus might have known America was there, but that's about it. Yeah.
No comment on that one.
Oh,
Oh my
sorry, sorry.
god.
That was non-PC. No, of course
No, it
the
was on PC. I liked it, but
American Indian.
let's move on.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm part Maori myself, so I'm a little bit indigenous myself, of course. But anyway,
Oh well, gosh,
so
then you should hate Christopher Columbus. Sorry, go
that's
ahead.
all right. Well, don't you have a public holiday for Christopher Columbus? Columbus Day
Yeah, and
is
it's
that?
slowly
Well,
becoming called Indigenous Peoples
Indigenous
Day,
Peoples
except
Day, yeah.
our non-progressive government doesn't want to bend to the
Yeah,
will of the
but
peoples.
The Columbus has become persona non grata in most corners of
Yes,
America now at this point. We all kind of
fortunately.
recognize that was a problem and messed up history. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's
there's some amazing stuff. What he is really known for is not discovering a new land. What he is known for is the blueprint of colonialism run amok, which is go into some foreign country, kill and rape as many people as you can, and enslave the rest.
yeah.
And it's
Oh,
like,
and
dude,
introduce disease that they were
yes,
not prepared for by
Mhm.
bringing lice infested blankets that you give these people, and boom, and flea infested.
the Europeans weren't as good on their
Yeah,
hygiene as the American Indians, from what I
Yeah.
heard.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a bad
Yeah, they
scene
were
all
not.
around.
Yeah, they were not prepared for those things. They'd been separated for by the
Mhm.
ocean. They didn't need
Right,
to have
they were at peace
antibodies.
with nature.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
thank you, Justin. That's a cool tangent. So did you have any things on this
yeah,
movie?
tangent. Look, yeah. So, um, well, at the end, right at the very end, there's a sort of a telling comment from the leader. There's three guys, of course. Without, I know there's going to be spoilers, but sadly, four of the samurai have been killed throughout the last second half of the film, but there's three remaining. Uh, Thankfully, my favorite character, Katsushiro, does survive, but there's the leader and one of the other samurai also there, and they're standing around at the end. And the leader says, "You look, we haven't really won anything. The real winners are these villagers." So,
Right.
um, in the same way that earlier in the film he was quite self-deprecating and he didn't want Katsushiro to look up to him or follow him, and said basically,
Yeah.
don't follow me. I'm not the sort of man you should be following. I haven't done anything special.
He taught them
Yeah,
how to rebel. I mean, this movie really is about. I mean, I think it's kind of maybe not intended, but definitely it's about revolution in a lot of
Yeah.
ways
Yeah.
to go about a revolution. And when the class traders educate the people that, hey, yeah, you can do this, then yeah, it's kind of like the spook who sat by the door. Similar. Go ahead,
Mhm.
Justin.
yeah. So I think at a number of levels, it had quite a few elements to it that worked. I think the romantic storyline that sort of built up in the second half of the
Yeah.
film between Katsushiro and Shiro Ashino worked quite well.
Oh yeah.
Kichu Chio, the eccentric offbeat samurai, I think was good light relief.
Were you
And these
surprised
sort
that
of
he was killed?
um, well, I figured that quite a few of them would die at some point.
Yeah.
And he did die heroically in the end because he actually took out the leader of the bandits
Yep.
who was firing at one of the muskets. They only had
Right.
three muskets, and if they had more than three muskets, I think it would have worked a bit, gone awry a bit more than it did. But fortunately, they only had three muskets, and they kept trying to steal one of these guns. But he managed to shoot, I think, the master swordsman dead from inside the hut where the women were. And then, yeah, it's quite a sexist film as well. It's very much a film of its time.
Yeah.
But then
And
the
of its
eccentrics,
era that is set in,
it's on
really.
its head. Yeah. And Kichu Chio manages to bust in and actually kills the leader of the bandits, but in so doing is shot himself and passes away. So, but he does fulfill a heroic purpose after all, despite being such an offbeat character throughout the film.
I was kind of shocked
Um,
when I first saw it because I knew he was like, the biggest star in the movie at that time, and he wasn't nearly as big as he became after the movie. But I was like, they're gonna kill him on. But then I thought about his character. His character is he's funny, but once you find out what's motivating him, he's a tragic character also. So maybe he had to die a hero to kind of, die for his beliefs. Once you find out what they really are, he really does it. And to address your comment real quick, I don't think it's a sexist film. Really, I think
I don't
it's a
think so.
film of its time.
if
Yeah.
it was an American movie, it would be much worse of that period. Asian films were much less sexist than Western films
Yeah.
during that period. But because Shino is I mean, she is kind of like a damsel in distress, but at least she has a name, a personality, our story arc, and when Monzo, freaks out on her, they kind of show, well, don't treat not just your daughter, don't treat women like this.
Yep.
You can't control.
Yeah.
You don't own them.
Yeah.
Well, when you think about it, it's true to its time because 1580s feudalist Japan, of course, the women and children would be would be residing in a hut while a battle was going on.
Right.
Whereas
Right.
it's actually Western movies these days are trying to, I guess, rewrite history in a lot of ways with having multiracial Bridgertons and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think when things started to change, that eventually filtered their way down to America was it that I know of. I'm sure there are countries I don't know about where this happened, but in China was really the first film market in the '60s that started having. They had the courtesans and they had the little daughters that was going to be married off and the meek little damsels, but they also often had a kick-ass swordswoman either as a co-star or as a star. Come Drink with Me, 1966. That's the first film that had a heroine, uh, swordswoman, and she's the fucking hero, and she takes care of all the business. And that became widely imitated. I covered that on this channel. We did Women Warriors, and Japan kind of caught on to that a little later. America started kind of by the '80s. They were kind of like, oh yeah, this is kind of cool, and of course, yeah, now it's super heavily prevalent. So I think it's kind of like it's making up for lost time. I guess that's what I'm saying by being so prevalent now. Maybe.
Hey, Justin, have you seen Magnificent Seven?
No, I have to say, I don't think I have.
I
If
caught,
I
I
have,
caught, I
Check
caught
it
the
out.
sense while you were talking. Now that you've seen Seven Samurai, you really need to make an effort to see Magnificent Seven, because I think you will be quite, I don't know, fascinated by how close that movie is to this, but yet is also its own thing.
oh, great.
It really is an incredible movie on its own, but it's also this movie, at the same time.
I like
Yeah.
it. I like those kind of
Just
remakes.
another version of it, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
they're rare when you have a remake that transposes the exact same story and characters into a different culture.
Yeah.
They're always some of the best remakes. I don't know why, but
It
It's
may be in that
especially.
Dropbox link.
go ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to say, especially, I think there's a kind of a real cool cross comparison when you can see how just a Western filmmaker approaches these themes versus an Eastern one.
Yeah.
And
They
it's
fed
real
into each other.
interesting. It's
Kurosawa was a fan of John Ford, and Kurosawa did do one of the early samurai movies, Sunshiro Sagata, in the mid '40s. Which that's probably blasphemy here, but I didn't think was very good. It was the first Kurosawa movie I watched, and I was like, I don't know, man. But it was, it's his first movie, so I'm not going to bang the guy. And back then, samurai films were more dramas than action. I mean, even 47 Ronin for 1941, that is an incredible film, and it's like 3.5 hours long too. but it's more of like the court intrigue and the class stuff. There isn't a whole lot of like sword play comparative to the length of time. But if you're in the mood for it, it's not boring. It's very captivating and well made. That's Mizuguchi. But yeah, Kurosawa broke it all open, really. I mean, he brought in the Western influences and then he poured a bunch of other influences, of its own. And, another good example of what we're now talking about is Yojimbo.
Yeah.
So I,
Yojimbo and Sanjuro.
well, you're Zimmer and Sanjuro, but I'm singling out Yojimbo because I saw A Fistful of Dollars when I was young on TV, and my dad got me into Clint Eastwood. So I'd seen that movie many times before I ever saw Yojimbo. Yojimbo was not one of the first Kurosawas I saw; it was one of the kind of the last. And I was like, "What the hell? This is this is the same movie." I mean, and of course, it has that incredible shot. It's probably was gory to some people in America when it's exported, but that shot where the dog's carrying the guy's hand, and Lucio Fulci took that exact shot in the beginning of New York Ripper. He has the dog sniff and he picks up the victim, who's been killed. He picks up their hand and just struts along, and he just has the dog trot along through the streets of Rome or wherever they are, as almost like just like a little tangent for a minute. And you're thinking, well, okay, is he going to help solve the crime? Is he going to eat it? And then he just goes on with the story. But that's how Italians were. It's like, why not, man?
Well, I'm thinking even with Ms. 45, but that's the very end of the movie.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the dog and the yes.
Yeah, Abel Ferrara totally picks that up.
Right. Okay, so Chuck, give us some input on your first seeing this and your impressions.
I can't remember exactly when I first saw it. I saw it on television, and
oh wow, it never played on television here ever.
It may have been back in the 80s, and
it might have played on, I don't know, HBO maybe.
I'm thinking one of the UHF channels were showing it, but I remember
I could see PBS showing it maybe.
I might have been in my 20s, and I was sitting around watching it with my mom, and I had seen, and I think she had shown me The Magnificent Seven back when I was a teenager, and I really liked that movie. So I watched this one, and I think I was looking for more literalistic comparisons. It's like in Magnificent Seven, you get a lot of characters like Robert Vaughn, who's, I'm going to say he's a coward, but he may be suffering from PTSD, and he's very gun shy, and I think he has this whole arc where toward the end he kind of becomes more of a more ruthless again, before he gets killed. And I was looking for like the comparison to that character. It's kind of like, well, there really isn't one, but
it's not an exact character to character.
They're kind of their own thing, but
some of them are.
But I saw that and I really enjoyed it. But the thing that hit just watch it toward the end was just, oh my God, wait a minute. This is different. This is heavy. This is really heavy. I mean, very downbeat ending. It's like you look at it at the end, you got the three samurai walking out of town. The young character, Kazushiro, wants to run off with Shino, but she's now rejecting him. And, and they're all just going to go back out of town. They're Ronin again. I mean, they're fucked.
Yeah.
And they're just going back to their whole thing. And, then there are these three guys who died heroically up on the mountain, buried with their four. Yes. And it's kind of like, yeah, that's it. It's over. And
that image kind of says it all with their swords sticking out of them.
Yeah, and as opposed to, I think the Magnificent Seven had more of a sunny ending, and so just kind of the weird comparisons. But it was just, wow, okay, that's a Japanese movie. I just having seen stuff, having grown up watching Kimba and watching the first Godzilla movie and whatnot. It was just like, yeah, that tracks. That tracks. And
yeah, you're right. The ending
and I vibed with it,
compared to Magnificent Seven, which wants to end with the big da 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 kind of a Hollywood end, and this one's more like, you guys need to remember lives were lost. It's like they like don't
Kurosawa often ends on a
serious
contemplative note.
Yeah. Buddy, you gotta make up your mind. Sorry, cat rang.
You're about to have a cat guest appearance. Mine isn't in here for once. Well, I'll just real quick say that first time I saw it, it was great. I saw it on DVD. I had not watched it ever, and this was 2001, and I already had owned several Kurosawa movies, and I'd seen most of them, and I kept waiting on that one. I'm like, I'm going to wait on the best occasion, but I can't wait for the theater because I live in Charlotte. It'll never play in the theater in Charlotte. Well, here we are. But so I got some employee of the month at Borders, and I got a gift card, and I bought the DVD. We had just gotten in because I was doing the videos, and I was like, okay, I'll go and grab this. I nabbed it, watched it that night. It was amazing. I mean, I was already a huge fan of The Idiot and Throne of Blood and Hidden Fortress. At least a couple of those movies that are just not Rashomon. Yeah. There, at least the 4 or 5 I was super fans, and then I'd seen a few others like Stray Dog and stuff like that. But so that was really amazing. And over the years, I would watch it occasionally. And then when I got the Criterion Blu-ray set, I actually had it on DVD first. I got the DVD set, and that had a lot of extras, and it had a nice print, much better than what they had it on originally on DVD, because they re-released it, they remastered it and put a DVD set, and then they kind of copied that set into a Blu-ray set a few years later, similar graphics, and I sold the DVD when I got the Blu-ray, and it's beautiful, it's magnificent, and the bonus features are all the whole movie's on one disc, and then with 2 audio commentaries, and then the second disc is all these great interviews with the writers, mainly with the writers and technical people. I'm trying to think of any actors. They had any vintage actor interviews, and I want to say maybe not. They do have some Kurosawa material, obviously, but yeah, when I heard it was coming to the theater, I was like, yeah, of course I got to see it. And then, to be honest, I know it's weird. Since I'd seen it already and I kind of knew the story, I could kind of turn part of my brain off, and it's kind of like what Keith was saying about picking up certain things and then other things that are kind of distracting or whatever. So by the time I got to it in a movie theater, and the sound was really clear and the picture was really clear, the subtitles were really clear, and I was like, I'm noticing a bunch of nuances I'd either forgotten or never noticed. But anyway, does anyone have any final thoughts on this incredible movie, or any important announcements? Or
no, I'm just like, I'm so glad I waited. And I highly recommend anybody watch it, whether they can see it in the theater or not. And yes, and Justin, you got to watch
Magnificent Seven.
I need to rewatch it.
Yeah.
It's been quite a long time since I've seen Magnificent Seven.
I was thinking it might be in that Dropbox link possibly already, that Magnificent Seven.
Oh, good.
If not, that's ask Dwayne.
I'm not sure if it is or it isn't, but I could always ask Dwayne, of course.
Yeah, ask Dwayne. He'll be glad to procure you a copy.
It's also one of my favorite things. My son's an actor, and when he was little, I sat him down one day, and when he was already getting into theater and stuff, and I think it was like a Sunday or Saturday or Sunday, and I actually said, "Sit down. We're going to watch The Magnificent Seven," and I plunked him down. He's like middle school, 6th grades, maybe something like that. And so we're going to watch Magnificent Seven. So while we're watching Magnificent Seven, I want you to watch. Where Steve, what's his face?
McQueen.
Yeah, Steve McQueen. Tell him watch Steve McQueen. Like I said, I want you to just watch him, because he only has like a handful of lines, but he steals every scene he's in. And I said, I want you to watch what he does in every scene as everything's going on, and what he's doing to deal
As an actor,
attention to himself as an actor. And my favorite moment, and I just mentioned this also, even though I know it's only sideways related to this, my favorite moment that I wanted to point out to him was just, B-roll shot as they're just trudging along and on their horses going a long distance and music's going and they're crossing through the creek and stuff like that. And Steve waits until his horse is dead center in the camera shot, and that's when he just takes his hat off, leans off of his horse, scoops the water up out of the creek, and puts it back on his head. He just became the center of the scene. He made himself the center of the scene. And so just pay attention to how he does it. It's like he's always doing something. He's not just standing around like this. I said, this is what made him a star. Watch this. A guy who had just a handful of lines became a star because of this movie. People think of it as a star vehicle for him, and he has just a handful of lines.
It really brought a lot of people to the attention of more people like Bronson and
oh yeah, Bronson does great.
Well, Yul Brynner had been nominated for an Oscar, but definitely
James Coburn also barely speaks, but
Robert Vaughn, that was before Uncle. So
yeah.
Wow.
I need to see
great.
it.
Great movie. I got to watch it again. Last time I saw it was Father's Day 2020, because the pandemic had everything shut down, and we had a local theater that my family rented out just for us to go in and watch Magnificent Seven for Father's Day. Yeah,
that's damn cool. Wow,
that's good.
Awesome. You got anything to wrap up with, Chuck? Before we
one little theme I just wanted to toss out there was the theme of villainy of the hero, and a lot of kind of a hypothetical question: are the samurai the good guys? And
do you want to tell the audience? Chuck has touched on this before on the show.
Just to kind of, just throw a little fly in the ointment. It's like, these are folks, there is that class disparity going on there. And the samurai are very much like outcasts, and which kind of figures into the end of the movie where they're just kind of leaving town dejected and whatnot. But it kind of plays itself out if you realize, like Mifune's character is very much kind of like, you find out why is this guy such an oddball, and you find out he is a part of the farming class. That's where he grew up, and he starts he starts dragging. He says these people are eating fine, don't believe them, and he starts dragging out all these suits of armor and whatnot that were killed. Samurai were killed, and these farmers all have samurai armor, buried under.
Yes, and that's a big plot point in samurai movies going forward. And some movies like this one, I thought portrayed it as, okay, they had to kill them in self-defense, and now they've got armor, they can sell it.
That was the impression that I got. Yeah,
but the most famous, I think, because it's one of the greatest horror movies ever made, Onibaba. That's the very plot. The mother and daughter literally murder the samurais. Sometimes they have to seduce them a little. Sometimes they just surprise them, and they violently kill them and take their armor. And
and so the relationship's very uneasy. And the whole thing is, as the film plays out, it's like, do the farmers have a valid concern in being afraid of the samurai? And it's like, yeah, they do. And that plays out in the ways that everyone fears the most, especially with Manzo, who has the whole issue with his daughter and everything. And just, I don't know, I just thought that was real interesting and real fascinating.
Definitely. And you covered them as the anti-heroes in one of our anti-heroes episodes.
Yeah.
That's right.
That was an interesting selection.
I think they are still the heroes, but when you look at the contrast, which is the bandits who are just basically going to rape, plunder, and pillage and take the harvest at the end of when the harvest season comes. But I think the point is, though, that they're anti-heroes and that they're not perfect. They could be corrupt. They could be mean-spirited.
They're still killers. They'll still kill in heartbeat
towards the villagers, So they're not perfect at the same time.
Right.
But it almost could be the bandits could almost be contrasted with government forces, like in feudalist or some societies like, say, Russia and the Soviet Union, where they forcibly took the crop from the local villages. And so the bandits could almost be a metaphor for government authority taking the local produce from villages who don't have much in the way of ability to fight back.
Very predatory. Well, this movie, the milieu is they kind of lucked out that the samurais they got partially because, as Keith said, the period of time, but they were Ronin, and there are plenty of other movies where the shogunate are the government, and the Tokugawa era, which lasted a few hundred years, and the Tokugawa era, that one, a lot of the later samurai movies deal with the corruption of the shogunate and how they, believe they're basically above everyone else. They're like, they're like kings, and they have their soldiers who will enforce their will with swords at any moment. And that's their class. And there are some great films like Harakiri by Masaki Kobayashi with Tatsuya Nakadai, in which a famous great film where he exposes the whole samurai system and with words. And not only that, then he just valiantly fights a little hut full of about 40, 50 samurai alone. And yes, he doesn't make it, but man, he takes a lot of them with him, man. And he manages to do is he gets to the samurai armor that's enshrined on this thing as like a symbol to all the ones that come into the little dojo. And he grabs it and pulls it out and destroys it right before he dies of his wounds. It's so awesome. I mean, it's like no big deal, right? You just grab something and throws it on the ground. But, to them, it's like, oh my God, it's like you've blasphemed in the home of the shogunate. But yeah, I love Chambara samurai films. I can't get enough of them. So this is definitely, it's probably the best. It's not my favorite. It's in my top 5 though, just personal favorites. But I do think it's probably the best overall, realized, made, whatever. So, so we're gonna go ahead and wrap up for the evening, and we really appreciate you cats watching out there. Justin, what do you want to tell these sweet people here?
Oh, thank you very much for watching, particularly if you've made it to the end. It's fantastic. And don't forget to like and subscribe and even share these videos. And I hope you enjoyed it.
We do too. Thank you. Take care. Have a good night, everyone.
And it's true that we cannot see that far behind. If we looked all the way in the past, we'd go blind. In the night, from the stars as they've all lived their lives, and the light that they gave as they burned and then died.